That's it from the newsroom for the moment.
Helen Daly, thank you very much for that. Let's bring in our next guest, the Liberal MP and Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Josh Frydenberg, joining us this afternoon. Thank you for your time. I want to talk about the union movement and the push for a wide-ranging inquiry and all of that in just a moment. But the State of the Union address from the President, let me start there because I know you're a close watcher of these things. What did you make of Barack Obama's fifth State of the Union today?
Oh, well, clearly he's focusing on his domestic agenda, and namely how to improve the economy, and some of the changes that he talked about was lifting the minimum wage for people working on government contracts. I think that's welcome, and also getting more women into the workforce, into more highly skilled and highly paid jobs. You know, the American economy is showing signs of improvement. Certainly the equities market has done that dramatically recently, but there's still $17 trillion of debt overhanging the American economy. So that legacy is far from secure, I think, on the domestic economic front. On the foreign policy front, well, unusually for State of the Unions, there wasn't a lot of talk about that. The main focus was obviously Syria and the drawdown from Afghanistan, but also the Iranian issue. And we all know that Iran is hell-bent on developing nuclear weapons, and this has put President Obama at odds with some of his congressmen in his own party, as well as with the Republicans, on how to best deal with Iran. So, you know, there are some testing issues for the US President going in to his last couple of years, and, you know, we all hope that he succeeds, because a strong America is better for the world.
Just on Iran, do you think he's got the right approach there? He was pretty defiant about, you know, the give diplomacy a chance message in the address today. Do you agree with his position?
Well, he did make the point that if President Reagan can deal with the Russians, then why can't the American president today deal with a less powerful adversary, namely Iran? Look, you know, I think diplomacy must be given a chance, and I hope it is successful. But, you know, Iran has proven itself pretty adept at avoiding proper scrutiny of its nuclear program. We know that it supports terrorist groups like Hezbollah, which are actively involved in the Syrian conflict as well as in Lebanon. So I'm not convinced yet that Iran will move forward in a way that's in a positive way and will completely remove itself from its nuclear program. So I think, you know, let's see how it plays out over coming weeks and months, but President Obama is right to give diplomacy a chance.
Let's return to domestic matters. This debate about what to do about these damning allegations in the building industry. Clearly the government wants some form of inquiry. It's promised a judicial inquiry already prior to the election. Labor this afternoon arguing there's no need for that. No need for the return of the building industry watchdog, the ABCC, either. Brendan O'Connor's argument was, in our last, when we spoke to him in the last hour, that you've got the police and the Crime Commission to deal with this, that the government mustn't trust those law enforcement bodies to deal with these. What's your response to that?
Well, this is a moment of truth for the Labor Party and for Bill Shorten and his shadow ministers. If they're genuine about removing corruption, intimidation, thuggery from the building and construction sector, then they'll want to see a full inquiry, and they'll want to see the ABCC come back into practice. And we took to the last election a policy that involves reinstating the ABCC. We got an overwhelming mandate from the Australian people for that. And as you know, David, when the ABCC was in place, it had a dramatic and positive effect on productivity in the workplace. Nearly $6 billion a year of productivity improvements flowed from the ABCC. Days lost to industrial disputation fell dramatically. In 2004, it was 224 days lost per 1,000 employees, and by 2006 it was down to just 24 days. So, you know, those facts speak for themselves. I don't know what the Labor Party is hiding from here. We know that it's in the pocket of the union movement. But if Bill Shorten is going to be a genuine leader of the opposition, if he's going to prove to the Australian people that he wants to see productivity increase and higher living standards, then he will take on the thugs in some of these building and construction sites.
But what about this point that if there are allegations to be made, they should go to the police? Is there also a problem with police not having the resources or the specialist knowledge to deal with some of these issues? Couldn't there be some sort of police task force to do all of this?
Well, as you know, John Lloyd, who's been formerly heavily involved in this area, wrote today about the need to increase resourcing for our policing authorities in this regard. But the ABCC did refer a number of examples of unlawful conduct, both to law enforcement agencies, but also commenced civil proceedings. They were extremely successful with the civil proceedings, David. About 100 cases of unlawful activity, they commenced civil proceedings, and I understand they had a success rate near 85%, and more than $2 million worth of penalties were enforced. So, the ABCC played a very important role as a cop on the beat, collecting this information, directly engaging with workplaces and building and construction sites, and that information was passed on to the relevant authorities. So, it's fair enough for the union movement to say, on the one hand, let's give police, all this information, but it's not fair enough for them to say, why not they support the Australian Building and Construction Commission, which has had a very positive track record in the past in proving to be an effective cop on the beat.
Just a final question briefly on not the ABCC but the ABC. The Prime Minister today suggested there is a feeling that the ABC stands for everyone except Australia. Are you one of those who shares that feeling, and what should be done about it?
Well, look, the Prime Minister's right to point out that the way the alleged Indonesian spying issue was dealt with by the ABC was, I think, wrong. They led the charge, the ABC, on that case with the Guardian newspaper, and that was immensely damaging to Australia's interests. Now we've got these recent allegations of mistreatment by Australian Navy personnel against some of the asylum seekers, and that again has now shrouded itself in a bit more controversy. So the Prime Minister is absolutely right to reflect some of the concern in the community. Look, I think we just need to hold the ABC accountable. They're subsidised by the taxpayer by more than $1 billion every year. They do an important job, may I say. Certainly through this bushfire season, we've seen the important role that they play. But I'd like to see a bit more balance, and I'd like to see a little bit more accountability on some of these issues. And I think the Prime Minister was reflecting the views of a lot of Australians in his comments.
Josh Frydenberg, we're out of time. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, David. Nice to be with you.
We'll take a break and then check in how the markets wrapped up today. Also, sport with James Bracey. Don't go away.
Commence conformity protocol.